Boom. Are we started? Give me 10 seconds. Let me get that audio up and running. Boom. Dope. All right. So, welcome. September. We're starting, right? But before we do that, let me cover kind of what we did, right? If you haven't seen, if you're part of the Discord, I've already posted this like an hour ago. But this is where we got to, right? Ta-da! It's all right. Could go further, maybe not. Who knows? But this is kind of where I would take things, right? So let's kind of like go backwards for a second and see kind of where we got, right? So this was our initial sketch, right? And I think when I first saw it, like when I was picking this assignment, it was something where it felt like good enough. You know what I mean? Like the image was like, it's fine, it's not done. I would never consider this like finished. But it was good enough to where I would probably never need to touch it again, right? And I felt like it kind of hit the tones really nicely. And the key thing with this, that when you're looking at thumbnails, right, deciding like when it's done or when it's not, is this. When you look at your image, and there's a couple key focal points here. There's like clearly like this section here, like we're kind of really showing off the back side of this ship. And then there's like a clarity kind of like happening over here. So this is 1, 2, or maybe like 2 down here, and then 3, right? There's a clarity within the kind of main focal point. Everywhere you're supposed to look is clear. The rest, very loose and kind of indicated, right? Because if you zoom in, if I zoom into any of this, right? Yeah, that's not ideal, right? You could even see like part of the ship, like that right there. This piece right there is this piece right there, just squished down, right? And I'm just like taking things and mushing them around and just trying to indicate and leaving just enough to be like, oh yeah, like when you zoom out, it looks good, right? So this is kind of where we started. And I was hesitant to do this image, and the main reason being because it looks kind of done, right? It's like it gives the illusion. But in when I'm working, this happens all the time where you'll get like, oh, that's pretty cool. Finish it off, because there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up. And so we went through the steps, right? We fixed the silhouettes, we arranged the things, we got everything in more of a neutral state. Every building here is kind of like or every building that I actually like touched has the same value range that each one encompasses, which for environment design, we know that's not how that works, right? We know that there needs to be atmospheric perspective, blah blah blah, this and that. And so we have this image here, right? Just focusing on texture, just focusing on silhouettes, right? Actually, this one's silhouettes, the next one being texture, right? And this one right here, right, being texture, right? The interior shapes, the lights and various things like that. They look like a finished building, except they're not lit according to the scene, right? Hopefully that makes sense. And then last step after that, compositing, right? Pushing the image a little bit further, getting the atmosphere and the value ranges to make sense, getting the lighting to work, set dressing it with like, in this case, with signs and, various props and things like that, just to kind of help the scene feel a little more complete, right? So like, oops, what I did was I kind of added a little bit more focus onto the ship, just some logos, some just colorations, various things, and then adding like a train in the back, or like some of these like more like, I don't know, things, props, various like poles and antennas and all that stuff. Same train, right? I just duplicated it twice. This ship is the same ship, right? And so we're just kind of going through the image. And now when you look around, it's not so like, I guess, messy in the other sections, right? Because the focal points are still clear, right? We're still hitting that clarity that we need in the certain areas that we're supposed to be looking, right? That's the same 3 spots that we had when we were looking here, right? But now, when you look at other spots, when you look in other areas, right? It's clearer, right? There's more to it. There's, obviously these buildings like back here, right, aren't as, let's say, finished, right, compared to like some of the ones like up front, but the illusion is enough just to get you there, right? And as you go back in space, you can kind of like have fall off, right? Details kind of fall off. The looseness is a little bit more okay, right? And after that, some weathering and value range. Let me show you what it looks like without my my color correction layers, right? So, like I established before, my color correction layers usually kind of kick it into the value range that I need. A lot of it is I kind of do things a little more ambiently. This way you get range. You can kind of like value adjust things as you go. But, you know, it's it kind of like, it allows me freedom, because if there's a lighting change, if there's anything that needs to kind of be adjusted, it's easier to do it when it's more neutral, right? So here, I'll kind of show you what layers I broke down to do that, right? First thing being, I wanted that ground plane to be a little lighter, right? Light from the city shining up. I needed to add a little more atmosphere towards the top, because that middle building right there was getting a little bit dark, and I wanted to kind of push it back. Rain effects, right? Some levels effects, just to kind of get that scene to fit a little bit nicer. Brightening up that city horizon a little bit. A little bit more rain. This is a color lookup thing. What I did was you just put a color lookup layer, and it kind of unifies your colors a bit depending on what you use. After that, a little more levels, and then a noise layer, right? So pretty simple, but it's nice because I can just turn all that off and on as I need. And if you know, my art director or somebody says like, oh, that's a little too dark, can you lighten that up? I still have that range. Not only do I have the range to turn off the color correction layer, I can also just do it on my original kind of like clean layer, right? So that's what that's about. Hopefully, you know, that made sense over the past you know, couple weeks that we've been doing this. You know, for everyone that's following along, right? Like, you know, hopefully you can see how well like your images really turn out once you kind of break things down. Doing this part of the illustration phase is really hard, right? I think something that people take for granted a lot, right, is not finishing paintings enough, right? I think you know, in class we're always like told to you know, do a bunch of thumbnails, right? And as a student, you're always doing like a massive amount, right? It's always 100 thumbnails. It's always like 50 ideas, you know, 20 this, 20 that. And every assignment is kind of like that. But then you get towards, you know, the one final, right, that you do. And usually, to be honest, a lot of students don't actually finish that. So like on top of not finishing those, you're also doing way less. But it's a skill, right? It's part of the workout, right? When you're you know, when you go to the gym, you know, you can do arms and, you know, chest and all that stuff. You skip legs, you know, you're not a full artist or a full, you know, person that works out, right? You know, you're kind of just doing one part. But when you go to do art, you have to do the long stuff just as much as you do the fast stuff, right? And, you know, just as much doesn't mean the same amount of paintings. It just means the same amount of time, right? Because, you know, maybe in an 8-hour day, or sorry, let's say a week, right? In a week, you can do, I don't know, 30, 40 thumbnails, sketches, ideas, stuff like that, and then one painting for that next week, right? That's the kind of balance you want to do. It's a week of time, not the same amount of paintings. Because one of the biggest things that allows you to get to that higher range when it comes to just being able to paint at a higher quality, right? And not even like this is the highest quality. This is just kind of what I'm capable of, right? There's people that are way higher, right? But the more illustrations you do, the more problems you run into, right? Every time you do a painting, you're going to run into problems. There's issues of lighting, there's issues of value ranges, there's, you know, textures, design things, you know, compositing, whatever. You're always going to run into a problem that you're going to have to solve, right? And if you never run into the problem, you never know how to solve it. So you need to do a lot to get to that point. The reason why we're so good at thumbnails, I encounter a lot of students where when, you know, we do mentorships or classes, I look at their work, I'm like, oh, you're really good at thumbnails. And then I tell them to finish the painting, and it falls apart, right? It's just like, they just can't take it like past that kind of thumbnail stage. They'll do a little bit, but then like, you know, the gap from like zero to like thumbnail finish, right, is like this big, right? Whatever arbitrary amount that is. But then the finish, they can only get to like there. They take that little bit, but really you need to actually flip that, right? Because your thumbnail should only be like this much, and then your finish should take it that much further, right? Maybe it's not visual because, you know, technically speaking, the image does vaguely resemble what's happening here, but it's not the same at all. It's almost completely different. But it's the same feeling, it's the same vibes, the same general idea, and we're just kind of clarifying it. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so it was funny. I was watching there's a We Are the World documentary. I think it was on Netflix or wherever it was. It was the Michael Jackson song, right? The We Are the World, right? And there was this point where they were singing, they were like writing the song, and it was really cool because they were talking about how they were writing it, and they kind of played this like quick recording of it, and it was just a bunch of mumbling. It was just like, it sounded very like jumbled, and the words themselves really weren't there, but the melody was there, the kind of feeling and the vibe was there, and they had a mumble song kind of happening. Like before they figured out the lyrics, they kind of figured out like the way the song kind of goes, right? And when I saw that, I was like, dude, that is so sick, right? Because like that's the same idea behind what we do for sketches, right? It was so like it was such a kind of like interesting, I guess, parallel that happened where they kind of roughed out the song because they were writing, they were figuring things out, and they didn't have the lyrics, but they had the general idea, right? And that's really what these thumbnails are. It's just the general idea. You can change things, you can keep things, but really you should kind of be going in and kind of fixing all of it, right? And I think like watching that, and it was just like, before bed kind of thing. We're just kind of hanging out watching something, and like hearing that and seeing that parallel was so interesting, So if you guys are, have any time, like watch it. It's actually pretty cool. But the parallels between like different industries and things is so interesting. And sometimes, oftentimes, you'll find out that knowing other things, like I was talking about last week, right? Knowing other things helps you understand this thing better, right? Understanding your craft better, because you start drawing parallels, because learning is learning, right? Getting good at something is just getting good at something. It takes practice, it takes skill, it takes, learning, fundamentals and stuff like that. And so the better you get at just understanding just things as a whole, right? Just other industries, other hobbies, other tasks, whatever, you start really developing, like your understanding of just how things work. You know what I mean? So, but I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, that's that, right? So yeah, let's move on. If there's any questions on this, hit me up. We can kind of talk about that, and so on and so forth. All right. So let's close this. Boom. Don't save. Let's go. All right. So we are officially doing vehicle design, right? Right now we're on stream 1, right? Function and idea. We're going to be talking about. I'm going to break down my reference board in a second, and then we're going to kind of start doing some ideations. I haven't actually quite decided if I'm going to do any or how I'm going to do those ideations. I was actually going to ask you guys: would you rather see me do ideations in 2D, or would you rather see me do it in 3D? Like, leave it in the live stream chat if you guys can while I talk about this. But yeah, I'm gonna kind of either do it in 3D or 2D depending on what you guys want. But we're gonna be talking about the reference board in a second, but really the function and idea is about this week, right? Because when we kind of do our concepts, right, we have to have an idea. So many times people run into this thinking like they can just kind of just go with the flow, right? There's like, I don't know what I'm designing, I'm just making things up, right? And then that's usually the quickest way to waste time, right? If you're ever like actually in a work scenario, generally speaking, they give you a task where it's like, hey, it's very spelled out. Everything is pretty defined, right? Even the references are found for you oftentimes, or at least the main references, because it's like, it's whatever the person that's in charge is thinking, right? Your director, your art director, production designer, whoever. It's usually what their vision is. You're really just the hand, right? But you do have kind of play to kind of make it look interesting. They have the main idea, the function of it all, but you need to come up with, how to make that function happen, right, within certain parameters. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're getting variations next week, material and details the week after that, weathering and presentation, right? We'll get into those as we go, but for now, right, function and ideas is where it's at. So let's do it. All right. I have a launch board here. I usually call it a reference board, but I think it confuses people, to be completely honest. I think I've had times, I think every time I do it, there's a, because people like when we do reference boards like this, right? We just call it a reference because it's just a board of references, right? And it's usually like my launch and stuff kind of going with it. But they kind of like link that up to what they think a reference board is, and it kind of gets twisted. So I'm going to try and rename this. That way it's not so confusing, right? So this is a launch board. This is something that you usually get whenever you start an assignment, right? Oftentimes they'll be like, hey, we want like these kind of things mixed together, right? It's this plus that, right? You know, when someone's trying to explain an idea to you, generally speaking, they use references that exist in real life, right? They use things that they've seen, things they've experienced. You know, it could be art sometimes. Most of the time it's not, just because they try not to, unless it's like a very specific art style or art thing that they're referencing, they'll try to like, you know, combine things with more realistic references. This way you get something a little bit more interesting, right? Because if you find an art reference, you can just derive what they use as reference and use that as your reference. That way you're not so like close to whatever it is that you're doing, right? You know, it happens, but you know, something where for students, for people learning how to design and trying to get better at it, try to pull from life, right? If you can pull from life, that'd be the best, because generally speaking, the translation is going to be, for one, a little more realistic, because the details on here, the little function things, all of it's going to be like real, functional, and accurate, right? But when you start kind of deriving things from art, it just, the scale could be wrong, the function could be wrong. Like you're really trusting that first designer to have gotten those things right, which even me, I don't get a lot of that right. So, all right, so this is a launch board, right? I have a big, medium, and small form language. So let's talk about this. All right, we're gonna break this down one at a time. So what I wanna do is, currently, okay, actually, before we get into this, right? I have like these thoughts just throughout my day, right? Just like things that are like, oh, that'd be kind of fun, that'd be kind of cool, right? And so when I'm doing my designs, I'm usually doing it based off of something that I'm like currently into, right? For those of you that know me, for those of you that have been part of my classes or even seen the past live streams, you know this, right? It's always something from life. And this is gonna be no different, right? Everybody, when you design from something that you actually find interesting, because if you don't find it interesting, nobody's gonna fucking find it interesting, right? You're the parent of this concept, you're the parent of this image, and you don't even like it, right? Think about that. It's like a kid, right? It's like the parents don't like the kid, fucking nobody likes him, right? But you know, it's the same thing here, right? It's, you have to have interest in this concept in some sort of way. You don't have to like everything you do, right? I'm not really a weapons guy, but when I design a weapon, I'll throw something in there that I find interesting, right? And so it's the same thing here. But you know, we have full freedom to do whatever we want because this is my stream. So what I've been doing lately was I bought a bike. It's actually, can you see it in the camera? Right. Oh, yeah, right there. There's a typhoon outside, so I brought him in. Don't want to get wet, you know. Anyway, I've been biking around just the area, just exploring, right? For one, I don't have a car, but two, it's been fun. So it's just kind of like gives me like a little more range. We've been like riding to other cities in the area, like local cities, and just exploring and stuff. And it's been really fun. And I really kind of like want to do this more, like once we get like a little more into the fall where it's not so hot, right? But in my mind, I was like, dude, I really want a K truck, right? So I've been wanting a K truck for, I don't know, years at this point. But basically a K truck is like a farmer's truck. This one actually looks kind of cool, but let me show you what they actually look like. K truck. Boom. It's like the most like whatever truck. But yeah, this is actually what they normally look like, right? Not that one. Like these, right? It's just like an 80s, looking truck. It's a small, like compact truck, mostly meant for like farming and stuff. But there's been like this rise, like you just in pop culture as a whole, where people like really like K trucks because they can do a lot and they're really compact and stuff. They'll even do like cool stuff. They'll mod it out, do whatever they need. But I'd love to have a K truck, and I was like, oh, dude, that'd be so sick to like have a K truck and then just be able to strap your bike to the back and then go drive around and travel to like get to a location and then use the bike to kind of explore a little more, right? That's like ultimately like really what I'd want to do like right now. This is what I'm into at the moment, right? Is it cool? Who knows? But that's what I want to design. I want to design that vehicle, right? And obviously, I'm not just going to do a fan art painting of this. I'm actually going to make something for something, right? So by looking into this a bit more, I was finding a couple references here, and I'm actually not sure where I want to go with this. There's this old Honda car. They sold it as a package. It was really cool because it's like this, just small car or whatever. And then they made this like scooter that kind of went with it, and it like tucks into the back. So, it's the same color scheme because they sold it together as a package. And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of sick, right? It's just like, I'm just kind of moving down this rabbit hole of like, this is kind of what I have in mind. This is like realistic. And then I'm like thinking, oh, what other ways did they do something like that? Because I need a main mode of transportation, and I need like a subclass of transportation, right? And this would like fit in the back of the trunk, and then you'd pull it out and you get to where you're going, right? So that was kind of fun. And then there's this other image, I'm assuming by this guy. What they did was they got a motorcycle. You can see it right here. And they just kind of built it into the back of a K van, right? So a K truck is that, K van is that, right? And so the back wheel, like the wheel of the motorcycle, there's no wheel there. It's actually just connected to the axle of this. So these are technically the wheels. And that motorcycle is powering the entire vehicle, right? And I thought that was really cool. But there's 3 different concepts kind of happening here, right? And I'm actually not sure where I want to go with it. But this is kind of what I think about. When you see this is a manufactured good, right? This is like, this is the package. They made this and they made this to accompany it, right? It's the same designer, same package, right? And then this is a consumer thing. They bought a truck and they bought a bike and they strapped it together, right? This is not the same as that. Color wise, they might match. There's like various things that, associated that it looks kind of cool. But generally speaking, it's not the same brand. It's not the same thing. They just carry it on the truck, right? 2 different ideas. It's not, you can't buy them together like that, right? And then there's this, where they bought a vehicle and then they modded it and they transformed it into something else by combining 2 things, right? This is a modded car, if you couldn't tell, right? And so 3 different ideas. Obviously this bike can't come out, but we're just going to assume that we're just going to play with the idea that it could, right? That it's like, it's part of the drivetrain, but then you could be like, oh, let me get out of this. Yeah, very similar to that, what is it, the tumbler from the Batman, if you guys see what Riley posted in the chat. So very, it's just gonna like, you can like pull out and then just like drive around and leave like the kind of main car somewhere, right? So that'd be kind of fun. But those are the 3 ideas, right? Modded, purchased, built together, right? And so basically, I just want a car and a bike that combines into one, right? That'd be kind of fun. And then next thing being camera, right? I just, literally I found this fucking 10 minutes before we started. This is the exact camera I have, or one of the cameras I have. This is a Nikon FM, just a mechanical like film camera. And then I've been, so I get into weird stuff on YouTube, right? I'll just be working and, things like videos just pop up and I just click on it sometimes, right? But anyway, there's this guy, he's a lobster fisherman, and he kind of like, he makes these videos on like lobsters, and what he does is he catches lobsters in his cage, and then there's a lot of lobsters that you actually can't keep, right? You have to throw them back out because they're either he calls them eggers, but they're basically just pregnant and have eggs, or they're too big or too small. I think it's like one of those. It's too big for sure. I don't know if too small is a thing, but Yeah. And so he just kind of like, it's kind of cool. Like he takes the lobster and he like some of the pregnant ones, he'll like break off the barnacles, give them a fish, and like throw them back out. And it's kind of a fun thing. Anyway, it's just something I was watching, right? It just plays in the side as I'm working, right? And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun, right? So I'm going to use that as one of my references. And the reason I want to do this, the reason why it's so random, right, is because this reference board needs to be random. There's things that are very, clearly related to what it is that I want to do. And then there's things that I like myself. And then there's like something random that I'm just currently into, right? And this is where the magic is, right? When you're designing, find something random, figure it out, right? And you put it in small. It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? It's going to be a lot of this for a while. But this extra thing, this small thing, is going to like kick this into a different mindset that maybe you didn't initially think about. You know what I mean? So find references, make them as unrelated as possible, right? K trucks and bikes versus a camera, completely different, not really the same at all. I think it's the only relation might be like the time period, right? The 70s, 80s, right? And then lobster, completely unrelated. But combining all three, we're going to come up with some sort of commuter vehicle with a detachable bike, right? So, all right, that's my 3 images, right? So the next thing that we need to do, right, is figure out our keywords, right? And so we have 3 different categories kind of happening here. We have shape language, right? Which, just looking at it, you can kind of tell like, there's like, the shapes, there's like, these cut lines, there's, the roundness of the barrel, there's, you know what I mean? There's a lot of those things. And then there's like the organicness of some of that, right? That's easy. Don't worry about that. Worry about it, do it. But everyone knows what a shape language is, generally speaking. It's just the shapes that comprise whatever it is that's happening here, right? Then we need to start thinking about function, right? How the thing works, right? So for example, like a car, like a vehicle, right? There's the engine. In this case, the engine's like in here somewhere. It's underneath the cab, right? Generally speaking. And then there's like wheels, and then there's like a drivetrain in there, and then on top of that's just the way it moves. And there's like a flatbed, that's where it carries stuff. There's like steering wheels, the interaction point between the person and the vehicle, so on and so forth. Headlights, the whole shebang, right? It's a car. We know what that is. So you need to know how these things work. You don't need to know the science behind every little thing, but you need to understand like, oh, a vehicle has 4 wheels, or these types of vehicles generally have 4 wheels. There's a flatbed for a reason, right? It's usually carrying things, and you know what I mean? And the size of the car is different, right? We have a truck. Here we have a van, and then we have I guess it's a coupe, or I was gonna say sedan, but it's just a coupe, 2 doors, right? And it's just thinking like, what's the difference between these packages, right? Just imagine this van without that bike, right? Just in its stock form, it's probably carrying people, right? It's like 2 in the front, and I think it's like 4 in the back, right? So you have a 6-person car versus the truck has 2 people, and then it carries a bunch of stuff, right? And then the coupe here, it has 2 main seats, right? And then usually there's like a bench or something in the back, and you can kind of fit 4 people, maybe 5 if they're like kids. And so like, each vehicle has a purpose, right? When you look at this, every single base concept, right, exists for a reason, right? That's why we have different cars. That's why people want different things. Some people want a truck, some people want a sports car, some people want a van. It just depends on what you do, and you have to understand what that is when you start designing. What's the purpose of the vehicle that you need, and what's the purpose of the references that you have, right? You'd be surprised how often people just don't understand what they're looking at, right? Really analyze these things, break them down, look at, whatever it is that you're, understand it in some sort of way, relate it back to the things that you know, right? Next thing being camera, right? The function here is it captures light inside of a lens. Captures light inside of a lens, and then there's a film inside here that kind of captures, whatever light that kind of flashed on it. There's shutter speed, there's the aperture of the lens itself, so on and so forth. But basically, it's a way to capture light, right? That's what the cameras do, right? In a very simplified form. And after that, function of a lobster, survive, right? it has these claws to, you know, there's a crusher claw versus like a pincer claw, right? These claws are actually different, in case you guys didn't know. They molt, right? They get rid of their shell, and they kind of, you know, that's how they grow. They get rid of the shell, and it kind of repeats over and over again until they eventually die. This one's actually kind of cool. This one's super rare. I don't know, nerdy lobster stuff. There's if you can see it, this side's blue, this side's just normal, right? And it's this is actually a male and female lobster, which is actually kind of cool. But this is like a super rare thing. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, understand the function, right? So as you're looking at these images, right, know what they do, because take those functions and apply it into your design, right? Because right now, the easiest one to see is this one, right? Because we're actually making a vehicle, so clearly a vehicle is going to make sense. But how do you take the idea of like capturing light and convert that to a vehicle? You know what I'm saying? Like that's weird, you know? I don't know how it's going to work right now. We'll get to that in a bit, but for now, just understand like that's one of the concepts that's kind of floating around. You don't have to use all of them, but you do need something, right? You do need part of it in some sort of way. Oops, sorry, there you go. Wait a second. There you go, cool. So you don't need to know, you don't need to do everything associated with, you know, the reference, right? You don't need to grab every single keyword and apply all of them, but you do want to pull a couple. You want to take some of these things, and it's going to help you make decisions. I'll show you how I do that in a bit once I actually get to the ideation phase. But for now, just understand that's what we're doing, right? We're understanding the keywords. That way, when we pull from that keyword, we can use that to help influence our design, right? Same with lobster, right? We have, there's, you know, ideas associated with this creature. And so what I'm going to do is take some of those ideas and bring it in somehow, right? So the last thing, this is the important one. This is something that people don't do that often, right? Abstract ideas. That's the key. This is what's actually going to push your design into a unique place, something that someone's never seen, or a different way to experience something, right? So abstract ideas are ideas you can't see. You know, like death, that's an abstract idea, right? You know, there's no visual to that. There are some visuals to it, but they're that you can associate with it, but there's not an actual look, right? It could be different for everybody. And so this abstract idea, you know, in this case, like when you look at a truck, right? Like the abstract ideas work, right? Because when you buy a truck, generally speaking, you know, I can't say the same for people in, you know, people that buy those the $100,000 Fords, but you know, it is what it is. But there's a work idea associated with it, right? Or at the very least, you know, carrying things, right? So, you know, when you see a truck, that could be an abstract idea, work, right? When you see, you know, something like this, the idea of like customization, right? Yeah, there's, you know, there's visuals associated with customization, but just the concept as a whole, you know, there's a bunch of different ideas. There's not a singular one. Or when you look at this other one up top right here, it could be, I don't know, like modular, or it could be like a I don't know, like a package type of idea, right? It's not like a physical package, but the idea of buying a consumer thing together, right? That could be a cool idea, right? Abstract ideas, I don't know, like capturing moments, right? Memories, right? That'd be kind of cool, right? Abstract idea here, I don't know. What do they do? And it gets hard. I think something I find difficult, right? When you're designing, if you don't know because this is just something I'm just watching, like I'm not even like actively watching as much, but it's just something I just happen to find on YouTube. And it's just like this creature, and obviously there's abstract ideas along with it, right? There's, you know, like I guess they're like bottom feeders, right? They eat, they just kind of crawl around the floor or of the ocean, stuff like that, and they go around. You know, just come up with ideas, right? We'll come back to that. We'll think more as we're moving, but it's just thinking about like what makes this lobster a lobster, right? And you don't want to just take like the claws, right? To be like, oh, that claw shape is pretty cool. We don't want that. We don't want that pincer idea either. Or not that we don't want it, but that's not the last thing that we stop at, right? You know, apparently, actually, they say that lobsters can live forever, right? Which is kind of interesting because they can just indefinitely kind of grow. Like they'll just like molt their shell and kind of just keep growing like that. And that'd be kind of cool, right? Like I guess the idea of I guess what is it? Living forever, right? That's not there's no visual to that, right? But you know, that could be kind of cool. And as you're just looking at these images, think about these things, write them down, right? Write them underneath if you have to. Do whatever it is you need to do. I don't do that as much anymore, but you absolutely should if you're first starting. And then, you know, just as you get better, you'll kind of start being able to just pull things and run with it, right? But yeah, first idea or first thing that we do, put together a reference board. And what I want you to be like, what I want you to really see here is that these images are very pared down. I have one camera I'm pulling from. I have one idea of a lobster I'm pulling from. I am pulling from 3 different images for my car, but to be honest, I'm really only gonna pull from one. I just can't decide on which version I want right now, right? I'll do that. I'm gonna use that as part of my variation process. But understanding, I have one idea from each category, right? Very pared down, and I understand what each thing I'm looking at is. What you don't want to do is just have a folder full of images that you're randomly pulling from, because it's very aimless and there's no like direction there, and you'll oftentimes just get lost, right? How many of you have ever done the thing where you just kind of like doodling? I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of going, you know? That works if you're a student because there is no deadline for you, right? You just do work until you finish, right? That's usually what it is. In a work setting, we do work until you know, it's due, right? There's a due point at some point, right? Whether it's a day, whether it's 2 days or a week, we have to have something by a certain time. And so if you're organized and you're kind of goal oriented, it's going to get you there a lot faster. If you're just kind of doodling, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just understand, it's going to take you 5-6 times longer just because you're just aimlessly going and you're relying on luck, basically, right? You're relying on until it feels right to get to a good point. You know what I'm saying? So have your references. You can have a folder full of images, right? So here, let me show you what I got here. Let me show you my wares. Boom. Hold on, let me grab some of these. Okay. So let's see here. I have a folder here full of random images, right? And some of these I just pulled, like obviously this is one of the cameras, right? These are things that I just pulled literally before we started. So it's like today, right? And these are just images I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's not exactly what I'm thinking, but it's kind of cool, right? You know, just things that I'm seeing. I just look, I'll show you that folder in a second. You know, just bike. This is like a cargo bike. That'd be kind of cool, right? I'm just Googling things and seeing what's interesting, right? I don't use all of them. This is the exact image, right? You can see it right there at the bottom, right? But I'm just, you know, seeing what seems cool, right? But some of these are cool. Some of these aren't really what I'm looking for, but I like a little part of it. You can keep all these references, but know which one your main one is. If you're wondering how that fits in the back, this is what you're doing. You kind of fold it up and you put it in the back seat. Right, that image, right, that image there, that exact camera. And these are the exact references I looked. I just pulled them all, I dropped them into a folder, and then eventually I reorganized them. That's the key for everybody here. The key to success: reorganize your references. So many times I'll tell people like, you know, I'll tell people like, when you're designing, like, you know, like organize your stuff. And then we actually get to meet and I'm like looking at the work. I'm like, let me see a reference board. Like I didn't put one together. And then you can see it in the work, right? Just trust me, just do it, right? So that's the first idea. This is the kind of real world pass, right? So I have a folder here. It's called art, right? And this is where the concept art goes, because, you know, you can be inspired by other people's work. You can look at people's work and be like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? So this is a Brian Sum image. I wasn't sure if this was concept art or not. I think it was. I think it's just like kind of like 3D models or something somebody made for Honda or whatever. So I put it, I wasn't sure, so I just put it in art, right? And really the important part about this folder here, this is a Ryan Hong image. It's a really cool K-truck. But the important part about this image here, the reason I separate it is because there's images like this. Like, I don't really know if this is, it looks kind of like a model, you know, like it could be, it might not be, but it could be. But when I look at this, I don't want to be influenced too much, right? I separate them out because these images I can pull directly from and it'd probably be okay, right? I can, you know, cut pieces out, use them actually in photo bashing and whatever it is I want to do, right? But these, you do not want to do that. Don't cut from somebody's art and do it. It's, you know, it's not ideal to say the least, right? Even like using it as an asset to photo bash with, like if you were to use it, you know, if I like took that door instead of like, obviously taking the whole car for anything is like bad, but even taking just the door is probably like, you probably don't want to do that, right? Because for one, artists usually recognize that stuff and we've seen that online all the time. So the reason I separate it is because sometimes that line gets blurred, right? Especially with these where it's like, oh yeah, those are pretty realistic looking. Those might be, you know, whatever. And it turns out it's some 3D modeler's concept, right? So if you're not sure, throw it in a separate folder. That way you know not to use it, right? And it's in a folder because I don't want to look at it so much, right? I'm just like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like some things here, right? Brian Sum's pretty cool. a lot of his stuff. This is a Mike Yamada image. I think it's for Wreck Ralph 2, I think. This is a Danny Gardner. Or a couple Danny Gardners. George Hull. And like when I'm looking around, I'm just like looking for, this is a Sheng Lam. I just look for artists that I know are good at vehicles, that are like, you know, actually strong at designing these things. Because for one, they're better than I am. So I'm like, okay, let me look at what they do and try to understand and break those things down, right? John Fry. And like, you know, just seeing how they do things just to kind of help inspire me, right? And what I want to kind of pull from a lot of this is like, the references here are strong. Like there's some vehicle designs that I'm just kind of like, oh, it's just a shape with wheels, you know, it's like whatever. And it doesn't really hit any like tones that you're kind of looking for, right? Because when we're designing, what you want to really understand is that the audience needs to relate to this in some sort of way. Not every audience, just the audience that you're aiming for, right? If you're making a car, generally speaking, it's for people that like cars. You know what I'm saying? Like that's usually the case. And so when you're designing for that audience, you want to design something that actually exists or has a similar function, because in real life, we have so many cars, right? We have so many different vehicles in our world for various reasons, for leisure, for pleasure, for, you know, work, for, you know, just commuting, this and that, whatever. And so when you're looking at these references, you know, you want to link up what your concept needs to do, like what its function is, and then what real life things are, because when they see it, they'll get it. I've never seen this car in my life, right? This car doesn't exist. This is a concept made by John Fry, but you can see the inspiration from it. You can see like some of those old like F1 kind of cars back in the day where it was like basically just like a bullet shape, right? And there's like that, just the dude in his helmet just popping out of the cockpit, right? You know, and you can like see a lot of those things. Or this is basically just a fucking delivery scooter, right? But then it's like meched out where it has like these really cool like movable legs or whatever they are, right? But you know where that's from, right? These here from George Hull, like, you know, yeah, you can see the car, and then there's the extra hover car bit, and then there's the extra like police bit. Obviously, these designs, you know, don't exist in real life, but they're referencing something that does. And when you see it, you just know, right? Because not every car is a police car. Certain cars are, right? Same here, right? These are like off-roading cars. Like, you know, this looks like the Bronco. You know, this could be an FJ. I don't know. But, you know, when you see these cars, you're like, oh, I get it. You know, they're off-road. You don't look at these cars and you're like, wow, that looks like an amazing F1 car. Like, because it's not. You just know it's not. It's an SUV, right? Thick tires. Big compartments in the back, a lot of like, you know, attachment points, this and that, right? It's a very utilitarian car, it's supposed to be, you know, and that's what that is. And you know what that function is. You relate to it. I've never seen the car, but I know what it is, right? Because you don't want to just create shit that just doesn't make sense, that no one's ever seen, because if they've never seen it before, they'd have no way to understand what it is. There's no like relation to it. If it doesn't exist, something like kind of remotely exist in our world, then it's like, what the hell am I looking at, right? You have to explain it some sort of way, and by relating it to something that exists now, you can create that attachment point that people kind of like latch onto really quickly. See, this is one of those tuk-tuk ideas, right? You can actually see it right here. It's the same general idea, and then it's like sci-fi'd out, right? Clearly construction equipment in some sort of way, right? These are like, other, like Brian Sum kind of goes on like more of that, more of the abstract vehicle ideas, but you can see where the inspiration's coming from, right? Like a street sweeper type of idea, right? This is like, I don't know, this is like just engine and suspension stuff, right? F1 stuff, K-car stuff, whatever. But that's the idea, right? Find things that are interesting to you, be inspired, right? That's really the whole point of all of this. When you look at your images, just be inspired. You can use it as a reference point, but don't use it as a full-on reference. I'm not going to cut anything out of these images because you don't want to do that. So I keep it separate. Keep it separate. And I'm telling you now, some of you are like, oh, I know the difference between a concept and a photo. Yeah, oftentimes, when you're looking at something like this versus something like, this, right? Yeah, clearly there's a difference. But when that line kind of starts getting different, right? Where it's like, that car right there. Okay. And this car here, right? That line's a lot closer. Really, like if you just put this in a normal setting without like all the words in the back, I mean, it'd be kind of hard to tell. Like, yeah, there's some modeling looking differences, right? This is an actual K-truck that Hoonigan did. It looks like this normally, I think. There's like a whole livery on it. But anyway, that's the real one. And then, there's a model of a similar idea, right? And you could probably use something like these. These panels are probably okay to use. These are designed by somebody else. You don't want to do that, right? So just things to be careful about. And, I don't ask me how I know. It wasn't me, but there's people that did it and got caught, and it's not great. So, but yeah, that's that. All right, what'd you guys say? Let's see. 2D? Damn, there's not even a 3D vote? You guys are crazy. Making my life difficult. Let's see. All right. So, let's get into it. Guess we're doing Photoshop. I'm gonna finish the same way as normal though. So what I'm gonna do, right? We're gonna do ideation in 3D, in 2D. Just to kind of show you how I go through ideas for the next like hour and 9 minutes. But I will be taking this into 3D to show you how I take things further. This will be a complete concept from start to finish. Like we're gonna render it, we're gonna do the whole shit, right? But I'll start my ideas in 2D. That way you can kind of see how I go about that, and then I'll show you how I translate that into 3D, right? Okay. So, I had a question. Alex says, are you thinking about the world that this design will go in? I fantasy or something. I am, actually. So, what I want to do, right? Where the hell is it? Boom, right? Wait, hold up. Livestream. What I'm going to do, sorry, I should have said this earlier. What I'm going to do is do something for this world, right? Obviously, it's not going to be this vehicle, right? But I'm thinking, oh, this would be a fun kind of wide establishing shot for whatever world this is, right? And then what I'm going to do is make a vehicle for this world, right? And this is, I'm glad you asked that. This is critical to understand. When you design a vehicle, right, or anything really, right, see if you can like link it back, right? Oftentimes, especially because this class or this session, right, is just random. We're just doing whatever, right? Link link it back to some old paintings. This way, for one, you have better portfolio images, right? If you make random images, it's fine, right? You'll probably be okay. But when, if you want to kind of have a stronger, more cohesive portfolio, do stuff for the last painting. You've seen me do that, a million times, right? Just going back to going into the demos, for example. Obviously this one's a new one, right? But this one was derived from that, right? Those two paintings kind of work together. So now you have two pages that work really well together, right? Same thing with this here. This camera was built for this car, which is then built for this painting. That's painting here, right? These three images are linked together really well. And so, when I go through my projects, I'm trying to make things that kind of relate to each other, right? You could even see this, the car, right? The buggy, right? Inside of here, right? And it's, little things like that. It really does go a long way. It helps your images just kind of stand out a bit more, and it makes your world a little deeper, because that's what we do, right? We create worlds, right? Or I'm a world builder, right? That's the whole concept. And so when you design, try to design something that actually makes sense for the world that you're doing, right? So that's what we're gonna do. But something I will say though, this image here, this was about illustration, right? Just this sci-fi ship. It's okay. In the grand scheme of ideas, it's not really quite there for me quite yet. It looks good, but it's not it's just a floating ship, right? It's just a fucking Airbus. It's just a, it's just a sci-fi semi-truck type of thing just going through a city, right? And really nothing crazy is happening here. There's some cool shapes and there's some general ideas happening, but we didn't really dive that deep into it. Not like some of the stuff that we did for, for example, this week, right? Or even some of the ideas that we had in, this month here, or even some of the stuff that we did for this section here with the dune buggy and all that stuff. Those ideas, a lot deeper, have something just a little more, just deeper about it. Whether it's a better concept or not, who knows, right? But the key thing that I want everyone to pay attention to here, the quality bar is the deceiving part, right? When you look at the quality, it's good, right? It's the same, right? Same, better, within ballpark of each other, right? And that's where I want a lot of people to kind of really understand about what's happening here. We have two images, right? Or a couple images, roughly the same quality, right? Let's go to one of my later ones, right? Some of this one, right, is probably the closest in quality to maybe something like this, right? But the ideas drastically different, right? I can break down so many different ideas that are associated with this image alone, right? Because we thought through it, we went through it, we made the whole thing, and we did the thing, right? But this one, all I did was just take my other painting that I just kind of bullshitted on a page. I was just testing out a technique. It was just a technique based thing. It was just make a thing, right? And so the idea started off pretty weak, but regardless, the quality is good, right? And some people actually might like this left image more, right? And what I'll say about that is, it's fine to like high quality images, but know the difference. Know the difference between a good idea, or a unique idea, and something that is just painted well. Because so many times we have students that get confused by what is a good quality image and what's an actual good design, right? We're not supposed to, or not supposed to, but we're not hired for our quality, generally speaking, right? For a real concept artist, for somebody that's actually good at concept design, quality is not the answer. You will never figure out the problems just by painting it better. That doesn't happen, right? So know the difference. This image here, high quality, right? These images here, a lot more thought through. Whether it's better or not, who knows, right? But the idea we know is deeper, right? I didn't really talk about the idea too much here. There's some fun little Easter eggs and things, you know what I mean, or whatever. And the ship design has some design stuff to it, right? But it's not really that deep. It's just a fucking rectangle with some rockets on it, right? Over here, we design these for a reason, right? This is what we actually do in production. This is what we do just to make things look good, right? Know the difference, understand it. Obviously, we need to work on our quality to get to a certain point, but it's not about quality, right? That's why 3D is never going to save you, right? So let's close that off. let's get started. All right, let me move this to the side so I can keep seeing it. Do you recommend design for your own world or based on an already existing IP? I do. It depends on what you're looking for. For me, for example, like my title would be like world builder, environment designer, stuff like that, just concept artist, right? Biz dev artist. And so when we design, for work, generally speaking, it's something brand new, right? Most of the time. It's something where you want to just, I guess, you want to make sure that like the stuff that you're doing is, original or, has some cool ideas to it, right? And so when you're designing as a student, right, you should probably be designing from your own world, right? Because that's what we're actually doing as concept artists. So, because there's some things that you can do that like, I've gotten work for like some of the fan art I've done or some various things, and that's fine. But that doesn't show how well you can design, right? It just shows how well you can paint, which it's not bad. It's just not what we do. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. So if you recognize this technique, thanks for watching the stream during that time. But basically what I'm doing is, I just have a layer, right? I'm just on a gray background. I'm just making shapes. I have a hard round transfer tool. So like my pen pressure, if I kind of vary it, please. Brush, there it is. You can like increase the opacity or decrease the opacity depending on how hard you press, right? And then I set the opacity to about 40%, right? 40, oops, 4, there you go. And so what happens is when I brush down, right, it creates these like random shapes that I'm kind of seeing here. And so I'm just making shapes that kind of fit whatever it is I'm trying to do. And then, we'll go from there. So this is the, if you haven't seen this before, I did this for the June Livestream 0. This is the one that when I came back, I was doing. And so I'm just kind of like making some shapes, right? This is kind of where, like that example I was talking about with that We Are the World song, like when they were just mumbling, like that's what this is, we're just mumbling, we're just making shit up and we're just trying to get a vibe down, right? Because if we can get that vibe down, you'll be in a good spot. But we don't want to worry about the small details, right? You're not trying to worry about every single small lyric, every single nut and bolt. We're just trying to get the main idea first, and then we'll figure out the rest later, right? Boom. So my first idea, right? Just make a truck, dude. Just make whatever's in your head. Just make that, It's the first thing in my mind is like, because it's really hard to like break out of that. For those that like designed before, there's this tendency to always kind of gravitate towards your first idea. You know what I mean? Like it's just natural, because when you heard the prompt, when you saw the thing, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm kind of thinking this, but just put it down, right? Because there's this thing that happens. You ever, when you're brainstorming, when you're just like thinking, there's this thing that happens whenever I'm trying to come up with new ideas and I don't write them down, I get stuck on the same idea. I don't know if you guys do it. I don't know how often this happens to everybody here, but if you're just thinking, right? For example, I'd be like, okay, I need an idea for a vehicle. I'm like, okay, cool, K-truck, sweet. Okay, what's another vehicle I can use? Truck. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking of the same idea, just like slightly different. And like what happens for me is if I don't write it down, if I don't like put it on the page, I get stuck on that idea and I just create the same idea over and over again, right? I keep brainstorming through the idea. But when I write it down, my mind literally forgets about it. It's just like, it just stores it away and I'm able to focus and figure out new ideas. I'm able to bring in other ideas, other concepts, right? And so with sketching, this is kind of the way I like to think about it, right? Just whatever it is in your mind, whatever thing that you had right off the bat, just put it down. Who cares? See what happens. Put it down on the page. And then once we kind of get to a good point, we can, just move on, right? Just put on the page. Things are going to look dumb. Things are going to look just not interesting at all, right? And you're gonna just kind of morph some things around and do whatever, right? It's just gonna be a bunch of trash. Eventually, though, we're gonna come up with something kind of cool. So that's the first concept. I just had like a box back here because that's where the bike's gonna be. I had the bed, and I had some wheels, and I had like the cab area, right? Simple, right? Super simple. Doesn't even look good, but we'll get there, hopefully. We always do, right? K-trucks are smaller than that. Let's see. There you go. That's whatever. It's mediocre enough to leave alone, right? All right. Next step. Let's do this again. Uno mas. Boom. Stretch it. Cool. Boom. Oh, I had some questions. Or I had some questions to me. Boom. Where is... Here it is. Andrea asked 2 questions, right? First one, do you plan before doing the sketches where to place the camera, station point, and how this will affect the composition or its bold decision? It depends, right? If it's the concept, like if the image that we're doing is an environment, right, where I need a camera in place, yeah, I will, just because you kind of have to, right? Like you need to put these things somewhere. So I'll usually have a general idea, but that's kind of where the sketching kind of comes into play, right? Like a lot of it really is like we're just we need to know what we need to know, like what the area is doing before we can like actually dive deeper, right? Because you need a camera for that. For props and stuff, not as much, I will say, just because especially like a truck like this, for one, I'm doing a side view. We're not going to see this in side view, you know, we're going to dive deeper and, you know, make it interesting. But you know, it really is like I'm just trying to get an idea down first, and then we'll figure out the rest later, right? So that's, I guess that's the logic behind it. But what I will say though, especially for like vehicle design and stuff, and we'll get to that later. We'll get to what, like, you know, how, why, and so on and so forth. We'll dive deeper. But when I'm doing vehicle designs, I do think about the composition. This isn't just gonna be some vehicle in a white void, right? We want to make something that sells the image, right? You know, as during the live stream plus review stuff, right? We had one assignment where it was there was a plane, and then, you know, it's just kind of in a white void. But then, you know, I told him, hey, put a background, put a scene, do the thing. And then when he did that, it just looked so much better, right? Because he had the model already, so it looked pretty good, right? You know, the design was already working out pretty well, but we just need to sell the idea better, right? Because now you just need to get people on board. Because when you look at it, you look at the first image being the, you know, the plane or whatever, flip the page, and then you see the design, right? We need to sell the moment and then sell the object, right? The moment is the most important one, because technically speaking, whatever it is that you're doing is never actually going to be a game, never actually going to be a thing in, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a student project. It's not a production thing. So the most important thing to actually see is the moment. It's because it's the art directors, it's the leads, it's the people in hiring positions that are actually going to be looking at your work, not a modeler, not, you know, somebody, generally speaking. There might be a modeler sometimes during an interview, but he's usually not the one that's like making the calls, he or she. So when you're designing, especially for a student, just remember your stuff's not getting built, right? It's no one's making this thing. They're just looking at it. And the people that are in charge of looking at this thing, right? They're the ones that you need to sell to. You need to pitch the idea as if they're going to buy it, as if they're going to like get that, like, you know, see your project and be like, cool, let's make that a thing, right? You're pitching, you're blue sky developing your idea in front of an art director, whoever, because there is no production behind your portfolio. It's just, you know, it's just a proof of concept, you know? So that's where you want to focus. all the production stuff, and that comes naturally, right? The more, like, as you dive deeper, you're gonna get more production work. You're gonna do more layouts. You do more, and they want to see that for sure. But you need to sell the image, because the people looking at it, that's all they really care about, right? Because when you talk to like higher level artists or whoever in, you know, whatever production that you're working on, right? They generally speaking, they just talk big picture stuff. You know, they just want mostly big picture stuff. And then they want to see that you can do, like, you know, concepts. They want to see that you can do like layouts and drawings and things, this and that, you know, because so many people can just draw, right? There's an abundance of people that know how to just design, like model something, design it, and then, like, you know, make call outs for it. That's easy. That is ridiculously easy. But what's not easy is actually selling a concept, right? Because the people that can inspire direction with their concept are the people that actually do best in a concept art setting, right? Cool. So about 3 vehicles here. I'm just like making shapes. I don't know how this is gonna go. I'm just scribbling, you know, we're just making shit up. And I spent, I don't know, like I spent longer talking about that lobster than I have actually making fucking making actual like concept choices here, right? But we are moving, right? So this is like my first pass, and I'll do, I don't know, 10 of these, you know, maybe 5 or 6, right? You're just kind of squeezing out ideas and just seeing what comes to mind, because what I'm going to start doing now is actually turning this into something, right? We're just making something. I'm trying to make them as like different or as unique as possible, right? Just something that, you know, one's a truck, one has a cover on it, one's a little longer, whatever, right? And we're just making stuff, and it's not impressive. This is not out of the scope of what most of you can do, right? But it's the next part that's actually the important part, because my leads, right, will never see this. They'll, you know, they're never gonna get to see stuff like this, because I would never show it, because they don't need to see it. This is for me, right? Next, what I'm gonna do, this is one part, and maybe I haven't ironed it out in my process yet, but I'm gonna save these. All right, we're gonna do a thing. Those are assets. Boom. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna merge this down to flatten it, right? Because what happens is I don't have the image like separated out, like it's transparent. So if I try to draw on top, you're gonna kind of get transparent pixels. But what I do like to do is just merge it down so I can get like, because now it's actually this gray versus like the transparent black that it was. And so now you can duplicate this whole thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to convert this to white so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to get rid of that gray. So I'm going to go this way, boom, right there, right? So right now it's transparent. The gray is transparent. Convert to smart object, rasterize. And now I have fully opaque, you know, vehicles that are kind of doing something, right? Full-on shapes versus the half kind of transparent ones. Because if I duplicate this around, you can't see what's behind it. But if I turn on this one, you can still see through it, right? That's what I don't want. So, but I'll save that. We'll leave that alone. Okay. I'm going to cut out this one first, and we'll start there. Bop. There via cut. And then M there via cut. Okay. So, first design up. Let's get it, boy. Okay. So, the next thing I'm going to do, right, is start really identifying pieces that I want, right? Because this is just a bunch of trash. It's just, you know, it's like a ghosted image of like soot. You know what I mean? Like, it's just nothing. So, what I need to do is actually make this into something. So, my first thing is going to be, I need to kind of start clearing up some of this stuff. What I like to do is I use a couple different tools here. There's I use a smudge tool, and it's like it's just a round that's a hard round that's been kind of smushed down, right, to an ellipse, and then the strength's at 99. And what happens is, what I'm going to do is grab this and I'm going to drag it around, right? If I keep this smaller, I can do it faster. But okay, So if I do this, right, I can kind of smudge things around. You get some cool designs. You're just like smudging paint, right? That's all I'm doing. But if you hold shift, it starts looking mechanical. It starts looking like actual planes of a thing, and I can start, you know, designing and stuff. So I'm gonna do that because what I like is these random shapes that are being created as I'm just pulling things around, right? So that's the first tool. Next tool being just like airbrush, various things like that, like just the kind of like, you know, painting on actual things. And then the next thing being my dodge tool. So this magnifying glass here underneath the smudge tool, the dodge tool, you can use highlights or you can use midtones or shadows. It's going to affect that category more than the others. So if I put on highlights, it's going to affect the highlights more. If I put on shadows, it's going to affect the shadows more, right? In this case, the image is pretty dark, so I'm going to put on shadows. And so when I use this with an airbrush, you can make forms kind of turn, right? So if I were to do something like this, just grab something like that. I'm like, oh, that's a cool shape, but I want it round. Sweet. I'll lasso it out, use my dodge tool, and just make that, you know, rounder shape, right? And you can just kind of dodge things and, you know, make things look whatever, right? So those three tools, right? Airbrush, hard round, like normal brushes, smudge tool, and a dodge tool, right? I'm gonna use all that to make this image do something, right? So let's get it. Oops, sorry. Boop. So when you're doing stuff like this, something to kind of keep in mind, if you are, if you're kind of putting things together, if you're kind of putting together some shapes, right? We want to start thinking about, you know, we need a top plane and side plane. We need forms, right? Because right now you just have this amorphous blob, right? It's, you know, there's some definition to it, there's some things, but we need to turn this into something, right? So the things that I like doing the most is just turn it into a form first and then start figuring out the forms after, right? So I need to start identifying top planes. I need to start giving it volumes and stuff, because right now it's just a scribble. But the second you start picking out the top planes, something like this, boom, I don't know. And just do it quick. Like this isn't like, you know, rocket science or anything. It's just do it fast, keep it chill, right? You can just do whatever. Boom. And we'll figure out the details later, but you use your dodge tool, boom. And the second you do that, right, you start getting a top plane, right? The sides kind of bulk out a bit more versus like that flatter kind of view of what we had. And so, you know, you start identifying forms, start making things happen. And eventually you get to this point of, you know, oh, that's starting to look like a vehicle. And then you start cleaning it up, right? So that's what I'm gonna start doing here. Boom, we're gonna get into that. You know, I'm gonna lasso some of this out and be like, I want this plane right here. Boom, right? That's dumb looking. Cool. And just start making stuff up. Oops. Right? I'm just pulling out planes and seeing what comes of that mess, right? And slowly we start kind of creating something that's, I don't know, interesting. Boom. Maybe not that much. There you go. Boom. And that goes back there, right? It's looking okay. You can kind of start like, you know, I'm just pulling shapes out of it. And the reason I do this, I'm actually not that good of a designer when it comes to like just making shit up, right? Like there's some artists that like they'll just start scribbling, right? They'll just start drawing and eventually they kind of come out with something, which is fucking dope, right? That's so sick. I can't do that well, or at least I don't think I can. Ah, shit, maybe I can, who knows? But I don't really like the way I do it because it never looks that good to me. So I just don't, right? What I like to do is create abstract shapes and then make it make sense, because what I am good at doing is making sense of forms, right? Just changing things, converting it, doing what I need to do to kind of make that work out, right? Like now I'm basically just drawing. I'm drawing with values, right? I guess AKA painting, but right now I'm just trying to figure out like, you know, what shapes are kind of interesting, you know, what things are going to kind of work out. There's obviously, I'm not like a straight up vehicle designer. I can do vehicles, right? But it's something where we just need to understand like what your strong suits are. Like, what are you good at? You know, what's something that you enjoy? Because a lot of artists, they'll see what other artists are doing. Like, you know, there's artists that like, oh, they draw so amazingly, and you can't draw that well. And it's like, yeah, work on that, you know. But also, like, what can you do, right? Because when you're at work and you're told to like, hey, we need a vehicle design, you're like, oh, sorry. You might want to hire Scott Robertson for that. It's like, well, we don't have him, you know, we have you. So what are you going to do about it, you know? And that's really what it comes down to. Figure out what it is that you can actually do and start working that way. For a long time, even environments, I think for a long time, I wasn't really able to like, I don't know, like make environments just like straight up draw it out. It literally wasn't until I started teaching where that kind of started becoming a little bit better. And even then, for the first while, it was trash. It was just didn't like, the concept was there, right? The understanding was there, but like I just wasn't good enough to quite do that. And I had to like figure out fundamental things to kind of, you know, make that better. But I got through a lot of my work because I'm just relying on that, on the randomness. There is a randomness, but it's not by chance that I come up with a design. Hopefully that makes sense. But boom, that's kind of interesting. And what I like to do, right? Take the exact thing that you just did, bring it in, set it on lighter color, darker color, right? Let's see what happens when we set it on darker color. Boom. Right, move it around, get some cool shapes. I don't know, man. I'm just making shit up. Just doing stuff that looks interesting. That's kind of cool. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting, because I saw this and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then I was thinking, oh, what if that's a headlight? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, Andrea had a second question. Second one is, when you sketch, what variables, design / art sense do you actively keep in your mind while sketching, and what variable do you leave for further steps? Because I think that trying to answer a lot of questions about the design early on doesn't help and slows the process. But on the other hand, going kind of blind creates boring designs. So how to maintain that balance? Yeah, that's a great question. So basically what he's saying is like, how much do I keep in mind, right? Because when you're designing, right, what I like to do, or when I'm designing, I like to compartmentalize, right? I try not to think of like every single thing at once, because it's, for one, it's overwhelming, right? It's just too much. There's just way too much to like, you know, capture all at once, you know? So what do? What I like to do is I think about, like, you know, if we go back to the reference board, right? You know, I'm really thinking about the big first, right? That first step is always thinking about just the big shape. As long as it looks like a vehicle with some sort of thing on the back, we're close enough, right? And then as I dive deeper, right, going to the variation stage, going into detailing and all that stuff, every step I bring in that new thing. That's why my concepts kind of evolve every week. It's not just like whatever comes out in the next, you know, 40 minutes is what we're stuck with. It's, you know, it's ever evolving, right? It's always changing. And so when I design, I try to think about those kind of main components first, and then slowly introduce the other ones, right? Right now, I'm just trying to make a vehicle, dude. Like, I don't care about any of this right now. And then camera, I'll probably bring that in next, and then lobster I'll bring in after that, right? But, you know, try not to be so, I guess, separate with it, because there is part of it's like you have to bring in ideas as soon as possible, but you want to do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, but it really is like, try to do whatever it is you can in the beginning, and then as soon as you kind of start getting better, you'll start being able to kind of balance more at the same time, right? Cool, right? Wheels. Freaking wheels, boy. All right, let's see. Cool. Yeah, great questions. Let's see. What else we got? We got something in the chat. Oh, what's up, kid? They have Cybertruck for kind of. Yeah. I don't know if I'm liking it, to be completely honest. So this Cybertruck is looking dumb. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out as we go. do stuff like that. That's kind of fun. Who knows, man? Who knows? But yeah, all right. So Christian says, "Hi Kenny, when you're in the thumbnailing phase and working for a client, is there a specific number of thumbnails you generally create before moving on to the next stage? In other words, how many thumbnails do you generally make for clients? Does the number change depending on whether you're working with character vehicle props?" Yes, it does change, because for like vehicles and stuff, I might show up with like 10 different designs because it's a lot easier, right? And like thumbnail, this isn't a thumbnail, by the way. This is less than a thumbnail. I would never show a client this. This is my first kind of pass. This is for me. I don't know, I don't know like what it's gonna be. You know what I mean? There's so much of it's just mysterious right now. So when I'm in this stage, I'm just exploring. When I submit to a client, generally speaking, it's probably gonna be 10-ish vehicles, right? Environments, I might show like 5 because environments, there's just more to it, right? And then characters and stuff, same as like characters, vehicles, props, I'll probably do about 10-ish, just because for one, they can be a little more picky with it as well. I have learned that with like props and stuff, people are a lot more picky because you can see the thing, you're looking at it, so it's a little more, it's a little less forgiving when it comes to like what your design's kind of doing, you know what I'm saying? But with like environments, because there's this, I guess it's a wider scope and there's like more to it. I can like, for one, I can cover more ground. I can show different ideas, like a couple different ideas within the same painting, but also they focus a lot less on the thing and they focus on the whole, right? They're not worried about the one tree, they're worried about the forest, right? So that's what that's kind of about. But that's me though. I think like me in particular, I don't want to say bad, but I am particularly not great at providing design variations, right? That is a choice that I make because for one, the design's in there. If not, we'll do another pass. So like whenever I get art directors and stuff that'll like, they want to see like endless variations. It's not that I can't do it. It's just, you have to tell me specifically like, hey, we need a lot of designs. But more often than not, I've found that if you just apply like 5, it's in there. If it's not for me, if it's not within 5, I'm lost. I don't know what the hell you're asking for. You know what I mean? So that's usually what that's about. Actually, that should go dark. Yeah, boy. Let's go. And like, I'm just making shit up, man. Like, like just putting panels on there, seeing what happens, dude. I don't know, We're just rolling, dog. Let's see. And then, duplicate detail, set this on lighter color, and then, dude, nothing. That happens a lot. Sometimes like you'll do stuff like this, and sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's not. Actually, that's not bad. Let's see. Boom. Cut that out. Cut that out. Cut that out. That's kind of interesting. And like slowly, right? You just come up with cool ideas. For now, it's very average, mediocre, just bullshit. But it'll get there, man. I promise. By the end of September, it's going to be a cool truck. It's going to be a cool little vehicle. I don't know his name, going to be Sam or some shit. And then like now, as I'm getting deeper into the designs, right, as we're going further and further, it's okay to have like harder and harder brushes, right? I was explaining in the beginning where a lot, that first step, a lot of it is just kind of like transparency and stuff like that. Now I'm cleaning things up, right? I'm just making something happen. I'm, doing what I need to do to kind of make that idea come out, right? But it's okay now, right? I know what I'm doing now, right? So at least I kind of know what I'm doing. Do I really ever know what I'm doing, right? So, boop, boop. All right, let's see. Hunter says, have to peace out for work. Oh yeah, later, dude. Thanks for hanging out, dude. Boom, boom, boom. Anybody else got questions?
Yes, I have a question. Can I use the mic or?
Absolutely. I prefer that for everybody listening. I prefer the mic. So, but yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's great. So, are you taking a look to your reference? Because for what I'm looking, it's like it's almost like a random shape. You're doing this in this demo, or when you're working for a client, um, do you watch the reference and try to make it like similar? Because many times we hear a designer like Fang Zhu, they say like you stay with the almost like 80% with the design of the vehicle or the props, and you change it like maybe 20 or 10%. I don't know if I explain myself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it depends. For most answers, to be completely honest, it depends. But the reason why I'm just kind of moving here is because one, what I'm really doing here, right, is I'm trying to identify a shape, right? Do I like these kind of like hexagonal, like polygon-esque, kind of like it feels like what's that one, the generation 1 Pokemon, the Polygon Pokemon, what is it? Is it Polygon? Is it Polygon? I think it is. Polygon Pokemon. Wait, I need to know. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it feels like that, right? And it's like, this guy, my boy. But really what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to identify what my shapes are, right? Because all I know right now is that it's like this kind of K-truck, K-van idea, and there's like a bike in the back. There's another vehicle attached to it somehow, right? And so I'm just making shapes, and really this first stage is like, do I like this shape? Do I like what's going on here? Because I might not like that kind of direction, and that's all I'm trying to do. So I'm not sticking too closely to my reference board, because for one, I'm not there yet, right? I'm mostly figuring out, are these the kind of shapes that I'm looking for in my concept? You know what I'm saying? Because once I know the shapes, it gets a lot easier. You know what I'm saying? You'll see it in a second when I do the next design. But for now, it's a lot of like, I'm just making things up, and I'm just trying to see like, is that kind of interesting at all, or is this something that like is just exploration right now? Hopefully that makes sense. You'll see it in a second once I get there. But
yeah. And what you do in the next phase, you try to adapt the line of the design of the photo on your new shapes, so become more coherent, more realistic.
Exactly. So right now it's like, I just need the shape, right? Because for example, somebody said this was like it has a Cybertruck form language, right?
Yeah.
Right now, it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? It's not going to look anything like this by the end of it. Let's say I chose this, right? It's not going to look anything like it, but I just need like that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's kind of it. I just want the feeling. And so once I get there, then I'll do, whether it's a drawing or really figure it out and like kind of dive deeper. Because with this reference board, I don't have to take any of the physical form languages. I can just take the function and abstract ideas and then use my painting. This one, nope, not that guy. That's not my painting. Copy image. There you go. Boom. Like I can use this painting to help me with my form language, right? Because what I'm actually doing right now is like in my mind, and you can actually, it's actually very clear when I put the image up like this. What I'm doing here is, I told you, I need a vehicle that has some sort of like detachable bike that belongs in this world, right? And then this ship right here is the only vehicle I have from this world. So you can kind of see where I'm getting the shape language from, right? Like you see, like now it actually kind of feels like, oh, he's actually going somewhere. But it's something where, do I like doing that, right? Because when you think about it, there's like cars, like the top left one here in our world, right? I guess less so in our world now, but generally speaking, they have cars like that. And then there's like industrial vehicles like trucks and stuff that look very different, right? So it doesn't have to be the same, but my mind is just kind of like, I'm just kind of using whatever I can to hopefully find something interesting. You know what I'm saying?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for using the mic. That's why we're here, guys. So if you guys are trying to, like, use that, definitely consider it. But it's whatever, bro. It's whatever.
Sometimes I feel like my comments are not mic worthy.
It's always mic worthy. My comments aren't mic worthy, but we're here live. We're here live. All right, let's see. That's fine for now. This is looking spiffy. This is about it, right? I'm gonna do something like that. Pow! Look at that, dude. Your boy. Let's go. Let's do something like that, right? We get. Looks like there's interaction points. I don't know. Let me turn off this so you can kind of see it. Oh shit! Hold up. Wait a second. Wait a moment. And you've seen me do this like a handful of times. Take the design you already did, right? Throw it on, make some adjustments, do whatever, dude. Like, come on, bro. Look at that, dude. Fuck. Look at that. All right, because like, you're just doing stuff, man. Like, you're just making, like, what we do, right, for our job is just make shit up, dude. Like, now it's like, oh, it's a bike, and like, you designed that? Holy shit. It's like, no, man, I just freaking grabbed it and transformed it, And then, now, like, you can see how slowly, from whatever this fucking thing is, like that left one, right, whatever the hell that is, right, now it's like, that's actually kind of cool, right? It's getting somewhere, right? Trust it, trust the system, right? Trust that whatever you're doing is going to get you there. But you have to remember, you need to rely on your fundamental skills, right? You couldn't do this if you don't know how to paint and draw, mostly draw, to be honest, right? You're relying on that skill to kind of get you there. And I think something that's really that really is the core of what I do as an artist, like me in general, right? You'll see me do these just disgusting sketches where it's trash, man. Like, you've seen students paint circles, or like, in the entire FCD school would just destroy my drawing skill when it comes to like those sketches, right? But then you see me turn it into a painting. You're like, oh shit, okay, that actually worked out, right? And the reason I'm so confident with that line drawing, right, with that just trashy line drawing, is because I know I can turn that around regardless of what's gonna happen, right? From freaking August 29th to whenever the end of September, it's gonna look fine, right? The image is gonna look good. I know how to turn this around, right? But what I need right now is a good idea. What I need is a concept that's worth pursuing, right? That's what you want to focus on. For those of you in your kind of earlier stages of your like learning journey, right? Just get good at drawing and painting. If you get good at drawing and painting, you will get hired immediately, right? Because it's harder to find that than you think. Everywhere they're always looking for, just somebody that knows how to draw, knows how to paint, right? That's what we need the absolute most. So many people are relying on 3D now because they see it as a quick way to get quality, right? And, the reason I'm leaving it up to a vote, or like whether I'm doing 2D or 3D, because I don't give a shit, man. Like, it's not hard regardless of what we're doing, because I'm not going to explain any of the nuances of modeling or using Photoshop. That's not the point. The point is, we're trying to get a good idea, right? I told you about the tools I'm using, but I'm not telling you about like, oh, this is how you get lighting. This is how you do these things. It doesn't matter, right? Those are fundamental things that, there's a million classes to kind of like focus on that. But for everybody here, right? Focus on learning how to get your design on a page, But the only way you can do that is if drawing gets out of your way. How many times have you ever done something where you were just unable to get an idea out because your drawing skills couldn't support you, right? You don't want that to happen, because now you're being held back by your skill. You can't concept because your your design or your ability is getting in your way, right? We don't want that. We want to be able to convey any idea we want in any manner that we want. If you tell me in 3D, great, I'll do it in 3D. If you tell me in 2D, great, it doesn't matter, right? Because the concept is going to be exactly the same, right? So, boom.
If you wanted to design a vehicle that was going to be like upgraded, like for like a game that had obviously the final stage would be like something really badass, and the beginning would be a little more simple.
Yeah.
When you're in this stage, would you go for the base, like a basic thing, and build on that, or go for like what your final idea for the really cool thing is, and then work backwards?
That's a good question. It depends. But more often than not, I go for, like me personally, I go for the very top. So whatever they're going to end up being, because when we design, this is my logic behind it. You can go, I've done it the other way too. It doesn't really matter. But the easier way for me is to aim for the top, because that's going to be the promotional image. How many times have any of you seen like commercials for games and they're like, there's this badass character, this badass armor, you know, they always have the last weapon or one of the later weapons, and they're like killing shit and doing stuff, and then you walk in and you're like a naked dude with a stick. You know what I mean? Like, because that armor, the gun, the weapon, the whatever, that's what sold you. Right? Because you're like, dude, I want to do that stuff. And then you start the game, you know, you're officially able to handle your character, and he's wearing like a potato sack. You know what I mean? It's like, the fuck is this? Because that would have never sold you, right? Because you're like, whatever, you know what I mean? It's whatever, right? So I start with the main concept, the goal image, and then I'll just strip it down to get to whatever I need, right? So if this is a vehicle where it's like, oh, this is like the final vehicle that you get and whatever, right? It's great, cool. And then I'd like, oh, you know, what if this whole backside can kind of come off and you'll get like a more basic version, you know, it's like less windows or, you know, less headlights or whatever. You know, it's a lot of that stuff. You can strip it down. In my opinion, it's easier to strip it down than it is to build it up, right? You can always, like, it's kind of like when you do concept, you can dial it back really easily. You can remove things, but taking something plain and adding to it is a lot harder, I feel. So, you know, but that's me though, right? Everybody's being a little bit different with that idea. But generally speaking, I recommend that. Yeah, great question.
Cool.
That sounds very specific. It sounds like probably exactly what you're doing at work.
No, I want to join in for this month, and I had an idea to do a boat, but I wanted it to be like an upgradable thing. So for like a portfolio, shows like a little bit of the game thinking, like what different stages could this thing be at?
Oh, nice. That's cool. Bob. Oh, I had some comments. Hold up. I'll get to that in a second once I kind of get through this part. Pop. Do I like that at all? Do I like this? Is that cool? Does that bring in the money? I don't know. Maybe. We'll leave that alone. That's good for now. All right. So let me look something up real quick. I had this written down from previous weeks, or from this week. Up. Where are you? Oh yeah, okay. So I was doing a portfolio review this week. And I've two kind of thoughts behind it, right? There's what do you do when you get a job, and then there's like how do you get a job, or how do you get a job, and then what do you do when you get a job, right? So the first thing I want to talk about, one of the things that happens a lot, because you know I'll do like portfolio reviews for, you know, various students or whatever just throughout the week, what happens a lot of times is I'll kind of go through their portfolio, and there's things that people want to show. There's things that like they're like, oh yeah, I'm really, you know, I really like, you know, I really, this is like my best work, or this, you know, they're looking at a thing and they're like, this is kind of what I'm looking for, right? This is what I like. But then, you know, I'll look at their work. I'm like, oh, but you should be showing this stuff. You know what I mean? You should be like, there's always like an image at like the very bottom or something that's like, it's very like it doesn't seem like they're proud of it. At the very least, they don't really care that much about it, right? And it's always like, I don't know. Oh, keep in mind, all right, I'm gonna call this out right now. 12:43, all right? Just remember that. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a second. I started this one at wait, not this one. I started this one at like 12, like I don't know. I think it was like 12 or 12:10 or something like that, or my time, whatever your time is. But at the 10 mark versus so it's 40 minutes, right? Anyway, just keep that in mind. Just pay attention to this one. So I was going through the portfolio, and there's some layout things that I wanted to talk about, right? We kind of worked through it with him and everything, but I wanted to talk about that with you guys because a lot of people actually don't know how to lay out a portfolio, right? There's things that people don't understand, like what we're looking for, right? Because why would you? You're new to this or whatever, right? So what I want to talk about is, what do you show in a portfolio and what do you not show in a portfolio, right? So the biggest thing that you need to understand about a portfolio is that a portfolio is a show of skill, right? We know this. That makes sense, hopefully, right? That's not that crazy of an idea to kind of get behind, right? It's just like showing us how good you are, right? And so when you show your portfolio, you need to show a couple things, because when we hire, right, when people are looking to hire for work or whatever, there's a very specific thing they're looking for, right? For example, when you go to the grocery store, hopefully, maybe I shouldn't say it here, because depending on how mature people are is how this question goes. But when you go to a grocery store, you don't just buy random stuff. You're not supposed to, right? Some people do. That's why it's funny. But you're supposed to go with a list, because you're like, I need these things, and I need to do this, I need to do that, right? That's usually what's happening. So that's what you do, right? You bring a list and you're like, hey, I need eggs, I need milk, I'm baking a cake, whatever it is, right? I need eggs, I need milk, I need so on and so forth. And so you bring a list with those things, and then you proceed from there, right? That's the general idea. And so when you're doing a concept art portfolio, or portfolio for really anything, what are you doing? What are you making, right? Well, I want to work for Disney. I want to work for Call of Duty, right? Or wherever. Those are very different places. So you need to make a portfolio that's geared around them, right? It's clear, right? Because of course, why wouldn't you do that, right? And so when you're making a portfolio, the first thing we usually think of is, oh, hey, let's just kind of like make it stylized, make it, whatever, because, Disney's looking for this thing, that thing, whatever, right? That makes sense. That's good. That's where you start. But the next thing I want you to think about is, what job are you actually going to be doing, right? Because there's a big movement idea right now where people are like, oh yeah, I do a lot of 3D, so let me, like everyone's doing 3D, so let me kind of like show that, right? Let me kind of let me do a lot more 3D work and kind of show I can do animations, I can do like these things, this and that, but you're not ever going to be really doing that, you know what I'm saying? And so the issue really comes down to, a lot of students feel that quality is a big driver in like a portfolio, right? If it looks good, then it probably is good, right? Very similar to what I was talking about before with my paintings, right? The two paintings where I have a very high quality image, but the idea is really not there, right? And so people will kind of like show these cool animations, cool like function things, this and that, but it's like when you actually get down to working at a place, you're probably not ever going to do that, because they have a whole team to do that. They have a modeling team, they have VFX, animation, or whatever, right? You might animate some things here and there, right? But generally speaking, that's not your skill. So the front of your portfolio is things that you're not going to be doing. So when they look at it, they're like, oh, so what are you trying to work? Like, we're looking for concept artists. You're like, well, I am a concept artist. It's like, well, the first 5 pages is animations, you know what I mean, or whatever it is, right? And I'm not like trying to like, you know, for those listening, I'm not trying to like call anybody out or anything. It's not like that, but it's a lot of like, understand like what job you're going for, right? Who's trying to hire you and why. What we need as concept artists, right, or people hiring for concept art, is surprise concept art. You know what I'm saying? Crazy, right? Like, it's wild. That's such a weird concept. Like, you know, but the whole idea is we need people that can, you know, bring ideas to the table. So what are we looking for? Right? We're looking for a lot of variations, right? A lot of different, you know, ideas to kind of bring to the table. Because that's what you need to show, right? So when you're putting together a portfolio, what you want to do, the thing that's going to kind of do the most for you is showing ideations, right? Showing sketches, showing the process. Sorry, that didn't work at all. Sorry. Boom, boom. There you go. You want to show like how you got to the idea, right? That's a big part of what we do as concept artists. So showing sketches, showing ideation, showing like, you know, just the thought process, because the people hiring you, they probably need ideas more often than not, right? So when you're putting together a portfolio, right, I want you to kind of think about, you know, who's going to be looking at your work, because there's unfortunately this happens a lot, and you know, it's nobody's fault, right? But it is something that happens a lot where people are busy, right? Just generally speaking, right? So when they look at your portfolio, you want to ask yourself, how many scrolls does it take to get to your image? Does that make sense? How many times do you have to scroll the wheel to get to whatever it is that you're trying to show, right? Something that people don't think about a lot is people are busy, right? People have things to do. People have lives. People, you know, and on top of that, they have, you know, work and various other things. So when you're like, you know, creating a portfolio or trying to show a portfolio, go to your website and then ask yourself, hey, I'm trying to hire, like, ask yourself, you are trying to hire a weapons artist. Okay, cool. Look at your page and then see how long it takes to get to the weapons concept, right? And it sounds funny. It sounds crazy. And it sounds very like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? But you'd be surprised how many people do that, right? For the person listening that knows exactly who I'm talking about. It's not about you or anything, but you know, that's just the latest example of what happened. This happens all the time. So many people do this, where it'll be like, you know, you get to the website and, you know, you see the thing and you get to like the links or whatever, and then it's like takes you like 5 or 6 clicks and then like 3 or 4 scrolls to like get to an actual concept versus like some of the other stuff that they think is like quote unquote better, right? Be careful of that, because people, me included, I'll click out of a portfolio within seconds, right? Because I'll look at it and be like, okay, you already get the skill. As soon as that window opens, generally speaking, we know exactly what we're looking at by that point, right? Because it's pretty clear. It's generally speaking, I know what I'm looking at, right? Because you just know the skill level. You know what I mean? Lighter color, boom. You know how good somebody is just by a quick glance more often than not, just because like we're so used to seeing people's work. So, you know, put your best work forward, right? Sell the images, sell the concepts, right? This is kind of what I was talking about earlier with the kind of like splash image, right? The selling the moment image and then your concept, right? Because you want to sell the image. You want to make sure that you grab their attention and you lock onto that, right? But then you want to then like get them to see whatever it is they're looking for, because they have a grocery list too. There are people that are like they're doing this thing and they are trying to find somebody to do a very specific job. I need someone to do a weapons turnaround. I need somebody to do this or that, right? It's very specific every single time, right? Because there's a grocery list, right? Every good studio, when they're hiring, they're always like, okay, we need these things, because they're not just hiring on a whim, you know, they're hiring based off of a need, right? And so when you're putting together a portfolio, show them what they need, and then show them why you're you, right? It's, you know, show them how good you are, but show them what they need to see. They need to see something. So thinking about, like, if you're trying to get hired somewhere, this is why that question of like being so specific about where you want to go. If for those that have taken my classes before, you've heard me say this. This is the first day I always ask, where do you want to work, right? And you know, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know, you know. And it's funny because you can kind of tell, right? Like when you see the work coming out of them, it's not bad. It's just, you know, it is aimless, right? Because some weeks there's a lot of like, oh, it's just this random thing, you know, it's just this. It's, you know, a painting, and then the next week has nothing to do. It's like a horror theme, and then like a Disney theme, and then whatever. It bounces a lot because they don't really know where they're going quite yet. And it's not bad when you're in the beginning of your career or beginning of your learning career. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you get better, you need to change that, because when they look at your portfolio, especially in the beginning, especially this is student specific, right? They need to kind of like. They need to know why they're hiring you, because if they don't, it's just like, what am I looking at? You know, how many for those of you like that have been applying, right? How many times have you ever heard, what do you want to do? You know what I mean? Because if you hear me ask you that question, that means your portfolio is probably aimless, because I don't ask questions because I like to ask them, right? Like for those of you who have taken like taken a class with me or done a portfolio review with me, you know, when I ask that question, because I'm looking at your work and I can't tell, right? Because there's too much. There's more than what I'm used to seeing from one particular topic, right? And so, you know, ask yourself, like, what do you want to do? Because your portfolio needs to represent that, right? Because whatever's in your portfolio, you're going to get a job for, or hopefully you're going to get a job for, right? So if you're showing a bunch of work that you don't really like doing, or just, you know, just random stuff, then, you know, you're going to get a job for just that randomness, and people don't really hire for randomness. You know what I mean? If they do, it's probably not going to be the thing that you want to do, right? So show whatever it is you want to do, be very specific about it. And, you know, make sure that the person that's kind of looking at your work isn't lost, right? Like, don't have them like chase down the tunnels of like whatever concept or whatever thing is trying to do. Like, be very specific. Like, you know, we have like categories in our portfolio. Oftentimes what I'll do is I will send them the link. Like, if I go to my website right now, KennyVoArt.com. It's kind of old, but, you know, whatever. We'll figure it out. So I have a page right here. This is the sell page. This is am I good enough to work here, right? And usually it's like, oh yeah, his quality is high enough, right? Because this is enough. And then when they go, oh, hey, we're looking for like more Call of Duty work or whatever, I will literally send them this link, right? Like this one, the exact one, right? Or I'm looking for more of this stuff. I'll send them this one. I don't send them the gallery, because then I'm like, they're like, well, you were doing a lot of like, you know, stylized stuff. We're looking for realistic. All they had to do is click over here. You know what I mean? But I don't let them do that. I force them to go wherever I need them to go, right? And so when you're doing your portfolio, think about who is receiving this portfolio. What do they need to see first? Get it in front of their eyes. If it's kind of random, yeah, send them the homepage. But if you're like sending to Disney, or if I'm trying to work at Blizzard, I'm going to send them this link because that's work we did for Blizzard, right? And it's like things like that you want to kind of do, right? And so just understand who you're trying to kind of create work for, right? It sounds crazy. It sounds like it's such a simple concept, but in reality, it's much more, I guess. It takes a lot of specificness, and it takes a lot of like just understanding what you like to actually get there. You know what I'm saying? So, but
Kenny, I have
Yeah.
two questions.
Go ahead.
about portfolio related.
Yep, yep.
So there is a number you think it's good to show, like a ratio about how many concept like sketches and variation, and how many like polish nice uh, nice illustration level concept.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So how many ideas versus renders? So,
Yeah.
all right, let's talk about a couple things. So the first part of that is how many pieces you should have in your portfolio. Generally speaking, you really only need like 10 to 15, right? And I mean, you want more than that, but if you have 10 to 15, you can kind of stop there and kind of like get rid of some images first before you really truly kind of add too much, right? Because within 5, to be completely honest, we already know if you're good enough to work or not. It's not really a question at that point. So you want to show the best work. You don't want to give a reason to not hire you. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first part. Next part is, well, how many finished to ideas should you have? You should usually have like 1 finished piece to about 5 unfinished pieces, right? Unfinished meaning thumbnails, quicker sketches, breakout images. Like the call out can be finished, but that's not part of the finish. Like the main shot, right? That's the shot. Like this shot right here, right? That's the one, and then I'll do a call out page, like 5 call out pages for this one image, right? 1 to 5-ish is generally speaking enough. And if you have 15 pages, that's 3 different projects, right? 1 to 5, right? It's 15, right? Or 5 images, and then times that by 3, right? It's probably 18 or some shit like that, but close enough. That's generally speaking what I kind of aim for. After that, if you really like a lot of the stuff that you're doing, you can kind of include them and keep them around. But generally speaking, it's probably overkill. You know what I'm saying? So, but you just want like 1 or 2 images that pitch the idea, and then like maybe 5 to 10 after that sell explain the idea.
Okay, and how about the 3D part? I see many time, even with some of my friends who work in the game industry, they say 3D is important,
Mm-hmm.
but because you can understand the spacing in the game. If you make a vehicle, you can understand better how the character can move inside the vehicle, this kind of stuff. But to show this kind of unpolished, unfinished 3D sketches might look bad. So, do you think it's a good idea to show in your portfolio, even if they are bad, or it's better to try to make it look a little bit more nice? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, really, right? What you want to think about, right, is this. Let's do this together, right? Let's do this. Boom. Oh, by the way, right? 12:43 to 1 o'clock, so 15 minutes. This first one took like 40, right? They get faster. This is what I really want to point out to you. They speed up. Your ideas kind of come a little bit quicker. Things are flowing a bit better. And you saw me use this entire thing. I dropped it in. I messed with it, and I would do like 20 of these, right? So that's why I called it out. I just want to show how fast that actually is. Anyway, let's do this real quick. I'm just going to show you what I mean. Boom. Let's drop this in here. All right. So I have, let me save this before I lose it. Desktop demo. Okay. Let's do this. I have a portfolio, and this is one of the pages that I show. If you just saw this by itself, would you think I've been working for a decade? Probably not, right? It's like whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not great by any means. It's just kind of whatever, right? But if I showed you this, and then I showed you this, and then this was the next page, right? Do you really question if my painting quality is high enough? You know what I'm saying? Like, think
No.
of, you know what I mean? Because, clearly the left one, that's a finished image, and this one on the right, that's a thumbnail, right? Like, it's easy to understand that because you're looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm capable of whenever I'm like fully on illustrating. This is what I'm capable of when I'm doing ideations, right? Like, yeah, I wouldn't show this, but show it a little higher than that or whatever, right? But the whole idea is there's a quality difference. But it's fine because you don't really question my ability to paint because I have finished images in the portfolio. Not every image needs to be a finished painting. You just need to show a couple because with that
I
finished,
get the point.
yeah. So with that finished image, right? You're selling an idea, you're selling a moment, and you're selling your top finish skill, and then on the next one, you're showing, oh, I have ideas. I can break things down. I can do, and together, that's the whole point. Together, they show your range of skills, right? So that's the main idea, right? So for everybody, right, as you're creating your portfolio, just remember, not everything needs to be finished, but they all need to link into each other somehow. They need to fit together as a world because you want to show that you understand how to build for a project, not just make random things. You know what I'm saying? Because if this was like random, it's like, so what's happening here? Why is your quality so low, right? But it's like, oh, it's part of this world, and then I show like a street level view, and I showed interior and all that stuff. And none of it, the rest of it doesn't need to be painted because, like I said, 1 out of 5, right? One painting out of 5 needs to be good. The rest need to do something else, right? And you're kind of like being more efficient that way. Of course, every image we want to show wants to be a banger, right? It wants to be the coolest shit we've ever seen. But it's not always going to be like that, especially when you're a student. Not every image you do is going to be the best painting you've ever done. But a lot of the ideas are pretty strong. They just need like a little bit of support, you know? So, but with all that being said, right, we just covered like the idea of like a portfolio and just like kind of what you need to have it as a student. What I want to talk about for a few minutes next is what it means to actually get hired and what you need to start doing after that, right? Because there is this weird gap that I've seen with a lot of people, like kind of when they get their first job, right? They have their portfolio, and then they get hired or whatever, and they're working for a couple years. And let's say they like left that studio or they're trying to leave that studio or whatever it is. Let's say you're trying to get the next job, right? What do you show? Because a lot of us kind of resort back to what our initial thought of what a portfolio should be is, right? Because a lot of like, you've only really done a portfolio once or twice, and then you've added images to it, right? That's usually the goal here. Because as a student, that's all you ever needed to do, right? You made a project, and then you kind of add a couple images, and then as you're a pro, you're just kind of adding more images to that, right? But when you're a professional, you need to shift your mindset, right? Because the portfolio that got you a job is a student level portfolio, right? It's something that it's fine, but it was your work as a student, and the structure that you have there, right, is different because now we're not really questioning how good your quality is anymore. Generally speaking, if you're a professional that's been working for a little while, right, and you probably have a decent amount of skill. Generally speaking, we're not your painting level really isn't in question, right? Because when you see sketches like this, there's trust that I can probably take this to finish, right? Because like I was saying a second ago, I have the other image, I have this image, so I can paint. But then you see this, you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Then all you're looking is at the ideas, right? And so with professional portfolios, it's the same thing. What I want you to understand is, as a professional, your goals are different than a student's, right? Because a student's goal is to get in. Usually that means like a junior level job, various things like that. A more like a junior level artist, professional trying to get another job is a whole different thing, right? Now, what you need to do is start creating work that changes your job title, right? Because, you know, you don't want to be doing junior work anymore. So you doing call outs and layouts and various things like that doesn't really move the needle, you know, because you already have that. You know, you're doing a bunch of that already, right? But what you need to do is start showing mid-level or more ideally senior level work, right? Because that's going to be your job, hopefully, right? Moving into another studio, right? Because you want to upgrade, not downgrade, or not stay level, right? You want to kind of move up in your industry, right? And so I think a big thing that happens a lot, right? This is a different portfolio review that I had this week, where I was looking at, you know, basically a more professional level artist's work, and I was like, oh, but you're showing a bunch of junior level work, you know? You're showing like a bunch of like call outs and things like, yeah, we do that as students, but you're not a student anymore, so why are you showing it? You already have it. Why do it again, you know? And that's what I want everyone to understand is the game changes, right? The focus shifts, right? Because at the beginning it's always like, show me you can draw, show me you can do call outs, show me you can do line drawings, this and that or whatever, right? Show me that you know how to work in production. But when you worked in production, I know you know how to work in production now. I don't really care, right? So yeah, we're good. You know, it's clear. You worked for this place, great. You know, and I know you know what a turnaround is because that's probably what got you there to begin with. And so now your portfolio has to shift. You're not doing junior work anymore. You need to start doing senior level work, right? And that's where a lot of people kind of mess up because they're making work that they did as a junior, but now they need to start shifting that mindset. They need to start doing more probably keyframe work, right? More higher level thinking. When you're working in a studio, ask yourself, hey, what did my senior do, right? It's like, oh yeah, you know, the highest level artist in the studio, like the concept artist, like either your lead or your senior, oh, they were doing a bunch of like keyframes, establishing work, world building, right? And so what do you need to do? Probably that, right? Because that's what they're doing. You're trying to push to their level, right? And so I think a big mistake that I see a lot is really understanding the differences between different job roles. Because if you constantly just kind of do the same things over and over again, you're going to get the same jobs over and over again, right? Some people ask me like, oh, I'm having a hard time like getting people to trust that I can do like senior level work or that I can kind of move up in my career, right? But then I look at their portfolios like, yeah, because all you're showing is junior level work, you know, all you show is turnarounds and call outs. And they're like, yeah, that's what we learned in school. And I was like, yeah, but you're not in school anymore, you know? And that's something that I think as you get better, you need to kind of know that, right? Just because we're in at this point, just because you're kind of working already, doesn't mean that you stop, I guess you kind of just continue what you're doing, because what got you in is not what's going to push you forward, right? I think there's a big like, complacency that happens a lot where it's like, oh yeah, I'm working, I'm good, you know, like I'm cool, you know, you're the hot shit for the month or whatever it is, right? But just remember, right, the game changes. You now you're in a bigger pond, right? Your whole the environment has changed on you. So what do you need to do to kind of keep up with that, right? So many times I've seen people go from like, you know, they're like the hotshot student, like, oh yeah, I'm like this good, I do all these things, and in class I killed it. And then you get to a work setting and it's, you know, everybody is better than a student in in a studio scenario. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody is better because that's what we do. You know what I mean? That's our job. Now you get that different level of like just people that can push that, or I guess just do other things, and you need to start kind of like aiming for those jobs. You know what I'm saying? Not aiming for their jobs, just those types of jobs. You know what I'm saying? So it's just these are just things that like just come up throughout the week that we'll be kind of like just talking about, or various things. And you know, for everybody, like as we're talking, right? Don't be like, yeah, I am talking about some things that happened like during the week, but you know, this is mostly about just trying to get everyone to be on the same page, you know. You know, obviously there's these are like real stories. I'm not making any of these up. It's a lot of the like, if you know who you are, you know who you are. But just understand, it's for as we all get better, right? We want to start figuring these things out. You want to start like learning, like what does it actually mean to be like a better level artist, right? Because everybody's so focused on just trying to find like, work in the beginning, and then after that we just kind of fall off. Like, you stop looking, you stop trying to aim for some of these things, so but find friends, find people in your community that can kind of help drive you, find mentors that can help push you in that way. I think for me, like a lot of my mentors and stuff, like if I didn't find people that were kind of like better and deeper into their career than I was, it's really hard to know some of these things, because you don't have the deepest view on the career. You're just kind of starting, and I think a lot of these talks that I have with some of the people I look up to, it's been so helpful, and I think like when you find that, dude, like, and if you're not looking for it, look for it. Like, don't just hang out with people that are kind of in your skill set. Just talk to people that aren't, you don't have to like get brunch with them or anything, but like, just go say hi. If you work in studio, they're probably down the hall from you or something, because they get the office, you get the cubicle. So, cool. This K truck's looking okay. It's looking spiffy. All right. Cool, guys. Well, that's all I got for you today. Probably what I'm going to do is do a couple of these. And then next week, what I'm going to do is I'll bring this design, whatever design I end up picking, into a more finished, or not finished, into a better block out, right? That way we can start kind of figuring out some details and things like that. This is how I design, right? This is kind of where I start, and it's not bad. It's not great. But this is kind of where I'll start. Maybe I'll kind of dress it up just a little bit nicer, add some like, gradients and various things like that to make things look good. But overall, right, it's very simple, very, very messy, just scribbles to kind of get an idea, right? And we start with bullshit like this, right? It's whatever. I just need shapes. I need something to look at, because for me, I have a hard time just designing from scratch like that. So I just make something up and I can fix the rest, right? From here, just start making shapes that you find kind of interesting, that might work in your world. I have a painting here that kind of like set that tone for me. Maybe it's a little too sci-fi. I'm probably gonna like dial it back just to kind of get it into a better stage. But for now, it's a decent idea, So cool. Any questions before we dip out? Sweet.
Hey Kenny, I have a question real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
Based on the conversation earlier where you were saying there's a difference between entry-level artists and people who are transitioning to mid-level.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to go into entry-level, but I want to make like, those like really pretty wide city shots in the end, like like backgrounds from The Witness, or things like backgrounds like from Jibaro. Should I still include those types of paintings in my portfolio, or should I just really focus on like the assets, the prop making, the things that'll get me like an entry level job?
Well, you should be doing both, right? Like, if there's a very specific thing that you're going for, right? Yeah, do it. Just include that in your portfolio, because that's what you ultimately want to do, and hopefully, somebody will kind of pick you up because of it, right? But just remember, right? Those artists that were doing it, they're definitely not junior level artists, right? Those are like, like Yun Ling was one of them, right? And so like the art level there is super high, and you want to show that you can that you're trying to do it at the very least. But just understand that that's probably not going to be your job once you get in. So you want to do like I was saying, 1 out of 5, right? One image is that painting, but then break down the image and show us like, oh, this is the call out for this, this, and this, or you have a deeper understanding of that world. That's what you want to show, because you can get hired for those big images, but chances are you're probably gonna find a junior level job, right? I'm not saying that's like for everybody, but that happens often, right? And so just kind of understand that, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's just you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because when you have a portfolio full of keyframes like that, right, you're playing in a different field, because that portfolio is a senior level portfolio. So you're not competing with students anymore. You're competing with senior level artists. You're competing with people like me. You're competing with people like, whoever, right? Just high level artists that are looking for senior level jobs, right? That's the portfolio that you set up. It's not that you can or can't do it, but just understand that's a whole different pond, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to do both. You want to show that you can do production work, but you also want to show the stuff that you want to do, because ultimately you want to get there, and there's a skill level that is necessary for you to do that, right? So absolutely. But yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'll have to split the ratio a little differently, because I've been getting into more plain air work. But thinking about what you said earlier, I'm not sure if it would really contribute to a more successful portfolio, because it seems like doing plein air work is just pretty paintings on the side. It doesn't really show design work.
Yeah, right. I think, and that's tough, right? I think a lot of people, they'll see, like the Weekend Warrior stuff or whatever, and those things are great. I'm not harping on those, but when they see that, they see it as portfolio work, right? They'll see it as things where oh yeah, if I put this in my portfolio, I'll be good. It's but they don't hire for stuff like that. Not generally, right? I mean, there's jobs out there that they need more of environment, plein air type things where you're just copying photos, right? Which is fine. There's definitely, that's more illustration work, right? But understand for everybody, understand what plein air actually is about, right? Plein air painting is a study. It's to show you how to paint in real life, right? It's how to show you how to paint materials, paint lighting scenarios, and to do it quickly, right, and efficiently, and try to capture the main idea first, right? That's what it does. But that's not what concept artists do, right? Concept art is a design. We create emotion, we tell stories, we create forms. And so plein air is a skill building thing, more in the illustration side. Concept art is about designing and creating, solving problems. Two different skills, definitely necessary for everybody. You need to plein air to get better at painting, but that's just working on your ability to draw and paint, not your abilities to design. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually have one more question.
Yeah, what's up?
Kind of related to that. So for making props and I guess turnarounds, I feel like I see a lot of those call out sheets for games, but I don't see it a lot in films. I mean, for films that are more realistic, I guess Blue Eye Samurai, because whenever I see those assets, it seems like that's something only senior level artists do.
Oh,
So,
call outs and stuff? You're saying?
Yeah, if it's for a realistic film.
Well, I mean, so I think it is skewed. I will say that. I think something to keep in mind for everybody, right? The stuff that we show when it comes to when a movie releases or a show releases, whatever, right? The things that we show are the things that we liked, right? And the things that we liked is very different from the things that we were told to do. You know what I'm saying? There's the stuff that you see in my portfolio is 10%, maybe even less, of all the images I've ever done. Because, yeah, not every image I do is the most amazing thing I've ever seen, right? Most of the time it's just good enough to get us through or whatever. And so, a lot of times people don't really show every single prop that they do. For example, right, I was actually looking at this yesterday, actually. So when you see somebody like Zach Retz, right, we all have an image of what he does, right? Because he's known for a thing or two, right? And so when you see his work, you don't even see it. Okay, I'm not even on the main page. Okay, this is the main page. This is the stuff that he likes doing, right? And then you click into one of them. Where's that Spider-Verse one? There it is. And oh, that's cool. That's cool, And then you start seeing the props. You're right. This is the call out for some of the buildings, right? This is the call out for the stairway. He's not focusing on it. It's just like it's in the middle of one post, right? And it's not even mostly about it. It's actually mostly about like some of the other stuff. And he just grouped all this stuff together. But these are call outs that you would have to do, right? This is more like, I don't want to say junior level work, but it is mostly like easier work to kind of define things. But what he likes mostly, probably, I'm just assuming, but from the stuff that I see and the stuff that he shows the most of, he likes this stuff. And so when you're looking at someone's portfolio, you have to understand it's just what they like to do. And a lot of people don't like doing props. They have to do it. Like I do props. I'm doing a prop today. Not this one, something else for something else. But I'm doing props most of the time, to be completely honest, right? But I do the big picture, and then I'll figure out all the stuff on the inside. So it is a little bit deceiving. Just kind of remember that it's not fully what you think when you see people's work. A lot of the props that we made for Blue Eye, no one posted, because for one, it's like some random stuff or whatever, but two, it's like I already posted the cool prop. I posted the one that I thought was interesting, and so we just kind of leave it at that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so there's like a lot more prop work going on, like even in high level positions, like everyone's doing it.
Yeah, everybody does props. Juniors happen to do more props, right? They'll get someone's painting and then they'll like kind of fill out some of the other props. But even senior level artists, they do props, right? Sometimes it's a harder prop to do, right? Sometimes it's a more complex prop or whatever. But if you're realistically speaking, you should break down the industry into two different categories, right? Because there's always the idea behind environment design, prop design, and character design, right? In reality, there's really only environment design and character design, right? I mean, I guess vehicle design is a thing too, but really you're only going to do those two things because those two things do props as well. We all do props, right? Because if you're an environment designer, you're doing environment props, barrels, even vehicles oftentimes, doorways, stuff like that, right? Just things that, props for the environment, right? If you're a character designer, you're doing character props. So you're doing like swords, bags, things that characters interact with, right? And so everybody needs to do props because that's exactly what you're going to be doing, generally speaking. And you just have to know that. But we don't post every single thing that we do because we don't really care about it oftentimes, right? I did a bunch of props, like food props, so I never posted it, because I was like, whatever, it's not what I want to do. It's not what I want to work. It's not the industry I want to work in. Like I don't want that to be my job title, so I don't post it on my social medias as much. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you post that stuff, you kind of get known as that, right? Because if you only ever show props, you're like, oh, that's the prop guy, that's the prop girl, but in reality, it's like, but I like doing keyframes, So.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. Great question. That's a really good thing to know for everybody else. Like that's just know that about what we do. We all do props. Everybody has to. Now it's just like, what else do you do? So cool.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know because it's like I would look at someone's Instagram and think like, okay, I guess this is what I have to replicate. But if the reality is it's like skewed, as you say, then I guess it helps to know from people like you like what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great question. Cool. All right, guys. Well, a little bit of a longer stream today, but thanks for hanging out. This is hopefully going to be kind of fun. I'm gonna kind of work on this a little bit longer throughout my week or whatever. I'll push this a lot deeper into just better concepts. We'll model it out. We'll do a whole thing. We're gonna make it look good, right? So for everybody that wants to participate, I would highly encourage this, right? Because the people that participate, to be honest, more often than not, the people that actually finish the assignments that I've been giving everybody, they're making work that's like the best work I've seen them make, right? Just plain and simple, right? The people that are doing the work are actually making portfolio pieces. We're nearing the end of the year now, where people are going to start hiring soon, right? September, October is when they start hiring to kind of finish off the work for the year. Be ready. If you don't have work, I mean, you don't have to sign up for this, but fucking follow along or something, man. You know, like do something, because you know it's really hard to make yourself do work, and that's what this is all about. We're just doing work together. Like I have a hard time working on my own. So what do? Just turn on the camera and have people hold me accountable, right? Me being here every week is holding me accountable. I wouldn't have finished this painting, right, if I didn't have to do it, because why would I, right? But now I have one more painting to put in my portfolio. And for those of you that are following along, you have one more painting to throw in your portfolio. For those of you that didn't, you missed out on an opportunity to do so. And it's not bad, you know, everyone's got things going on, but you know, consider following along, right? You don't have to sign up for the Livestream Plus. I don't care about that. Just follow along, do the stuff, post it in the Discord, say, hey, I finished the thing, you know, because at the end of the day, this is about you, right? But if you want feedback, right, you can join the Livestream Plus, right? That's where we're going to kind of break down the things that you're doing, kind of push you a little bit further, right? So if you are looking for that, you know, in the Discord shop, you can sign up for that role and participate that way, right? But, you know, if you're busy, strapped on cash, whatever it is, don't worry about it. Just follow along. It's free. I'm not talking about anything there that I'm not talking about here. It's the same thing. They listen to this to get their next assignment. So just know that, right? So, all right, guys. Well, that's all I got for you. I'm going to try and survive this typhoon for the week, and then, yeah, we'll see how it goes. So, all right, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next week. Later.
Thank you. See you next week.